Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Monday, April 24th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we will head over to Alan, where he sits down with Jorge Robledo, Vice President of Operations at Kinder Systems, and Harsh Sabiki, Senior Vice President of Worldwide Revenue at Octopus Deploy, to talk about how Kinder Systems has been leveraging Octopus to automate its software deployments, which helps Kinder Systems increase its time to market and eliminate engineering burnout. Alan will then speak to Stephen Mitchell, CFO at Redgate Software, as Stephen explains key challenges tech CFOs need to consider amid economic uncertainty and what they can do now to drive long-term growth and think beyond the incremental. Then Alan will meet with Ashok Reddy, CEO at KX, to discuss time series data analytics and the paradox companies face in expanding their data-driven decision-making while simultaneously trying to manage and reduce costs. Next, Alan will speak to Ken Exner, Chief Product Officer at Elastic, to talk about how Elastic Common Schema, an open source specification, has been accepted by the Open Telemetry Project, supporting a common schema for metrics, logs, traces, and events data. We will then air some interviews from KubeCon Cloud NativeCon Amsterdam 2023. And finally, we have an episode of View with Vizard. In this episode, Mike interviews Prim Iyer, Senior Vice President of Global Ecosystems at Palo Alto Networks, as Prim discusses the rise of cloud marketplaces, recent cybersecurity innovations, the benefit of consolidation, and the critical role channel ecosystems play in enabling security. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
Your DevOps adventure starts here. At DevOps On-Ramp 23, you'll find everything you need to get started with DevOps. Best practices, processes, and tools. Tips and tricks from experienced practitioners sharing their real-world experiences. This virtual event will provide you with the roadmap to a successful DevOps career and the opportunity to get hands-on experience. The rush has started. Don't be left behind. Join us on May 4th, 2023.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for April 25th. First up, SpaceX has achieved a significant milestone by successfully launching the fully stacked version of its Starship for the first time. During the launch last week, the vehicle had a successful liftoff and ascent through the crucial max Q period. However, the launch encountered an issue when the first stage did not separate from the upper stage as intended, and the upper stage did not light up its own engines. Additionally, 3 of the booster's Raptor engines may not have fired, as noted by SpaceX. Unfortunately, the flight concluded with an explosion which destroyed the vehicle, although this was intentional, as SpaceX has set the flight path over an area cleared of human presence for safety reasons. Despite the anomaly, SpaceX considers the test a success, as the primary goal was to gather crucial data about the vehicle for future orbital flights. SpaceX has stated that the team would view anything beyond the initial launch as a win. The company plans to release more information about the flight and its outcomes as it conducts further investigations. Next, in southeastern Wisconsin, Microsoft has agreed to purchase a $50 million land parcel that was originally intended for Foxconn manufacturing facility. Instead, Microsoft is planning to construct a $1 billion data center on the 315-acre piece of land in Mount Pleasant. While it is unclear how many people the data center will employ, Microsoft has stated that such centers employ usually around 300 to 400 people. The land parcel is part of a tax increment financing district that includes the Foxconn campus, and property taxes collected in these districts can be used to support the development. Foxconn aided Mount Pleasant officials in purchasing the land for the district with $60 million, and the proceeds from the sale of the land to Microsoft will be received by Foxconn as a partial reimbursement of what is paid for originally, back in 2017. Foxconn had previously declared its intention to build a $10 billion facility in Mount Pleasant that would provide employment for 13,000 people, but the company did not fulfill its promises. In other news, Facebook's parent company Meta has agreed to pay $725 million to settle a lawsuit that claimed the social media platform allowed Cambridge Analytica to access the personal data of millions of users. Anyone who's had a Facebook account in the United States since May 24th of 2007 can apply for a portion of the settlement amount, but it is unclear how much each person will receive since the amount will be split up amongst all valid claims. Users can submit a form online or via mail to apply for the settlement. This lawsuit originally arose after revelations in 2018 that Cambridge Analytica paid Facebook app developers for access to the personal information of roughly 87 million users, which is then utilized to target American voters during the 2016 election. Next up, the European Union has approved its first comprehensive set of regulations for issuing and trading crypto assets, including Bitcoin. The regulations will be implemented in mid-2024, and firms involved in crypto asset trading and issuance will be required to acquire licenses from national regulators. The licenses will allow them to provide services across the 27-country bloc using a passport. Major crypto asset service providers must disclose their energy consumption too. The EU has also implemented new rules to trace crypto asset transfers, requiring information on both the source and the recipient of the asset to be recorded on both sides of the transfer to prevent money laundering. Additionally, transactions over €1,000 from a self-hosted wallet or crypto address of a private user will also be subject to this tracing rule. The EU has expressed hope that these regulations would serve as a model for other countries for developing proper policies when it comes to crypto. On DevOps.com, we have a survey showing major DevSecOps adoption. From the global survey conducted by GitLab, 56% of respondents in organizations are using DevSecOps practices. To learn more about the results of the survey, go to DevOps.com. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at a study that shows how as criminal organizations get bigger, they tend to resemble actual businesses. Small criminal businesses spend nearly 80% of their operating expenses on wages, while larger organizations have corporate structures in departments such as IT and HR. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. Finally, on Cloud Native Now, we have an article covering the events at the most recent KubeCon Cloud Native Con Amsterdam event. Alan Schimmel attended the event and shares his insights on everything that happened. To read all about it, go to cloudnativenow.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
Discover the cutting-edge insights of our new show, AI Times, a series that explores the limitless potential of artificial intelligence. Sponsored by the AI Infrastructure Alliance, the AI Times is at the forefront of the AI revolution, tackling the crucial questions of how we can leverage AI for the betterment of humanity. Stay ahead of the curve as this show delves into all things surrounding AI, including trends, pressing concerns, and the positive impact AI is making around the globe. AI Times.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. We have a double-barreled dose here for our next interview. Let me introduce you to our next two guests, and they're going to talk about a pretty cool new partnership that's just been brought to market. First, in the blue background with the octopus is Harsh Sabiki. Harsh, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
And we're going to come back to you in just a second. I want to introduce you to our second guest, and that is Jorge Robledo, and Jorge is with Kinder Systems. Hey, Jorge, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having us today.
Pleasure to have you on. So, Harsh, we started with you, so I'm going to come back to you. Why not, if you don't mind, just if we get out of the way, give our audience a little bit of your personal background and maybe a little bit about Octopus Deploy.
Sure. Yeah, happy to, Alan. And this is the second time I'm on the show, so thank you for having me again. My name is Harsh, as you mentioned. I've now been with Octopus Deploy for about 9 months. I head up all of the revenue organization. This includes customer success, support, solutions engineering, technical account management, essentially all customer and field-facing functions within the organization. I may be somewhat new to Octopus, but definitely not new to the industry. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, or 2 decades, and majority of that has been in software development. And I've followed the evolution of the SDLC from waterfall to agile to DevOps development. Prior to Octopus, I was at HashiCorp, and then prior to that at GitHub.
Sure. Two companies very familiar to our audience. Harsh, I actually remember didn't you had just started the last time you were on?
You did, yeah. I think I was on week 4, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we broke you in. But anyway, not everyone in our audience is going to be as familiar maybe with Octopus Deploy. Why don't you, if you don't mind, a little background on the company?
Yeah, no, happy to. So Octopus Deploy is, as the name suggests, we're a continuous delivery and deployment solution. We fit nicely with the organization's existing CI/CD pipelines. To us, we focus on the CD part of the DevOps tool chain, and because of that, we integrate nicely with your existing CI solutions that you may have in place, like GitHub Actions or Jenkins or TeamCity, as well as integrating with version control systems, GitHub, GitLab, and others. And the beauty of Octopus Deploy is we can then take those built artifacts and take them from your CI system and deploy them to wherever you need to put them. That could be on your own internal on-prem solutions, systems, public cloud, private cloud, mainframe, and even databases. So we are a vendor and platform agnostic deployment solution.
Love it. Excellent. All right, Jorge, let's turn over to you now. Same kind of thing. Give us a little bit of your background and then a little bit about Kinder.
Thanks, Alan. So I am the Vice President of Operations here at Kinder Systems. And what that means is that I'm in charge of infrastructure, state, and Head Start customer success, as well as state operations in our logistics department. And I've been here roughly 4 years. Prior to joining Kinder Systems, I worked in the news and broadcast industry. And prior to that, I spent a little bit of time in the nonprofit sector, as well as information security prior to that. And, a little bit of background even before then is I used to run a hosting company where the paid customers subsidized the free users. In other words, we provided an environment for people to learn about Linux completely free of charge.
That's great. Excellent. I got into tech originally with what became a hosting company too, so I can understand that. Jorge, what about Kinder Systems though? Again, I've heard of them, but I'm sure people in our audience are not familiar.
Of course, Alan. So Kinder Systems was formerly known as Control Tech, and we started really in 1993. But what we do today is we are the leading provider of subsidy management software in the state agency and Head Start program, as well as for childcare providers. And, I say we started in 1993, but Control Tech back then did unrelated work to the industry. So really our start in this industry was in 1997. And what we do today is we help agencies, childcare providers to ensure that they're in compliance with state regulations, Head Start regulations. We also help, streamline operations. So everything from the capture of time and attendance to subsidy reporting, payment calculation, those are things that we do in-house. And, I guess to explain the scale of what we do, it would be safe to say that as of today, we've processed roughly 500 million attendance transactions, Alan. So that means that when you drop off your kid or you pick up your kid from daycare, you may be using our software. And so that number of transactions is approximately 500 million up to today. We've also calculated roughly about $3 billion in subsidy payments for providers who are helping the state provide childcare services for underserved populations throughout the United States.
I love it. It's a great stuff. All right, so we've got this out of the way, gentlemen. Who wants to take the lead here in talking about this great new partnership you guys are announcing? You going to make me pick?
I was going to say, maybe how about Jorge, you start maybe explaining how to the audience how you guys are using Octopus Deploy, and then I can add some color commentary.
Thanks, Harsh. I agree. Well, I guess before we talk about what it looks like today, let me explain what it looked like 4 years ago, right? And 4 years ago, with a little over a few hundred customers, our engineers would do deployments by hand. So that meant that we had a release ready to go out the door, and a couple engineers would work for a few hours after business hours every day for a couple of weeks, sometimes a month, to make sure that everybody got the latest code. So, they would deploy the web app, they would deploy the database changes, the reporting changes, any API changes, and then they would smoke test the sites one at a time. So, extremely painful process. And so, what we've done is, in partnership with Octopus, we have completely automated our deployment process. So that means that everything that I just mentioned, for example, that deployment that took multiple weeks to do today, we can do deployments, a couple hundred sites in a matter of 2 or 3 hours, completely unattended. And, again, that means updating the database, updating the web applications, underlying API components, reports. And we're also in the process of adding smoke testing to the Octopus Deploy pipeline. So we are very, very excited. We've increased our speed about 2,000% in 4 years, which is very significant. Another way to say the same thing would be that our peak number of deployments for last year was roughly 500, right? So this process that would have taken, several weeks to a couple months to do, now we do it without even really thinking about it, which has ultimately allowed us to focus on bringing new features to market quicker and essentially, reducing staff burnout. Because as I mentioned, a couple engineers working after hours, well, that tends to get very tiring. And also, anytime you have people doing manual steps, performing manual steps, you're introducing the risk, right, of human error. And so, our philosophy at the organization level is the more automation, the better. If you're doing anything more than once, we should be investing time into making sure that we're automating it and that it scales well.
Love it. Harsh?
Yeah, I'll add a couple of additional comments to that. The use case Jorge described is actually the perfect use case for Octopus Deploy customers. And he mentioned sites. These are end customers that they're deploying the software to. And that is possible with a unique feature to Octopus called multi-tenancy. So that allows organizations like Kinder Systems to utilize Octopus Deploy in a consistent manner, but then change a few variable sets to mimic the various sites that they're trying to deploy the software to. It could be the same software version, but then it changes slightly. And that's the benefit of multi-tenancy, where the developers and engineers build the software once, but they can deploy it to many sites by changing just a few variables. The other also is where that software will be running, which environments. Them being a government agency or working with government clients, they've got AWS government GovCloud or an Azure GovCloud, but not everybody's on the cloud, right? A lot of their end customers that they're utilizing the software, some of them are still running on-prem or are running mainframe or other legacy systems. So the beauty of Octopus is we help in that hybrid environment. We know organizations are at different stages of their maturity when it comes to the utilization of the public cloud. So we help organizations who are still on-prem, hybrid, or fully in the cloud.
And if I could, Harsh, one other area that we are very thankful for in terms of support is, when we started using Octopus, Octopus had a little bit of support for Linux, but today, Linux is really just as well supported as Windows environments. And that has been a critical benefit for us, because we acquired a Head Start company called Copa not too long ago, and they're strictly Linux based. And Octopus allowed us to leverage the same platform, the same best practices like variable sets, which allow us to standardize the variables for deployments in a multi-tenant environment, like Harsh stated, and it allows us to do that in Linux too. So the tools that our engineers are familiar with today are the same tools that we leverage on that side of the house, which means that we can literally deploy to any cloud environment, any on-prem environment with any OS. We can leverage cloud native functionality like containers or Azure Container Registry. And so Octopus is really sort of where our deployments begin and where they end. And to that effect, it's become this really amazing tool in terms of cost optimization, because while we may have our DevOps engineers design a deployment process, everybody throughout the organization understands what's going on in the deployment process, which means that we can also have other teams like our help desk team do deployments, and that allows our developers to focus on what they do best, which is bring new features to market and troubleshoot complex issues. So it's sort of created a culture shift here where everybody has a baseline understanding of deployments, and that means that a lot of groups can make suggestions, and it's all in the name of continuous improvement, right? We're always constantly evolving and bringing in new features that Octopus Deploy provides so that we can continue to optimize what we do.
Jorge hit on two really important points that I wanted to just double click further on. Alan, I'm sure you've had other companies, DevOps companies, come on your show and talk about Kubernetes, containers, and serverless, right? That's the new buzzword, or a lot of organizations are shifting to that. But we at Octopus, we support all those emerging technologies, but we have not forgotten about the legacy systems like Linux and Windows, because we know in organizations, hardly any organization out there is going to be 100% containers. That's a gradual transition. That transition is going to still take years. And for good reasons, some organizations will probably decide to stay on VMs or Windows or Linux systems.
Don't fix what's not broke. It's interesting. I was just on the phone with the manager of a PR agency asking us, what kind of stories are interesting to us here at Techstrong. And I was trying to explain to them, for instance, next month in May, we're doing a show called, a virtual event, an all-day event called DevOps On-Ramp. It's not aimed at sort of cutting-edge DevOps, or, it's aimed at people who are just starting their DevOps journeys now, who are just contemplating and taking those first steps, because we forget the lessons. And actually, Kinder's a great example of this. Things get built organically, sometimes by acquisition and mergers, sometimes just the way of things. And we move from Windows to Linux to cloud native architectures and all this. And the other thing is the way we seem to have lost sight the crossing the chasm market model, right? You have 15% of the market that are these early adopters, the cool kids. And the cool kids are always adopting the cool things and using the cool technologies. And everybody wants to be a cool kid. Or a lot of people want to be, and we tend to focus on those cool kids. But then we forget that beyond that 15%, there's 85% more in the market. And there's 35% of the mainstream that will adopt stuff fairly earlier, not as early as the cool kids, but fairly. And then there's 35% of the main market, of the mainstream, they're just coming on to Kubernetes. They're just starting to look at the DevOps stuff. And then there's 15% that are laggards. Who knows if they ever will adopt that, right? But we can't, you can't build a successful company, in my mind, just catering to the cool kids. Because you're limited to 15% almost by definition. So Harsh, that's a great point. And Jorge, I think Kinder's system, I'm not saying you're a laggard by any means, but a lot of solid companies aren't really interested in being that 15%, trendsetters who are taking their chances with kind of untested stuff. They want to make sure if they adopt something, it's solid, right? And it's mainstream. So I think this is a great example of that, right? CICD's now been around 10, 12 years at least, right? But it's really getting solidified. It's really become mainstream with some of the stuff like companies like Octopus Deploy are using. We don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to ask Jorge, this isn't the only technology you've ever adopted, I'm sure. And how has the graph, if you will, of adopting, deploying, and accelerating, the Octopus deployment, or universal deployment automation solution, how is that, measured up for you?
I got to tell you, Alan, that it's been a really awesome journey with Octopus Deploy. It in a sense, we at Kinder Systems organically understood that we were lacking automation. And so what that caused was a sort of a top to bottom understanding on the value that Octopus brought to the table. And so not only were we growing, but Octopus Deploy was also continuing to morph alongside of us. And so it's been really awesome in terms of the experience. There's a huge community for Octopus Deploy that basically helps provide each other support. And so I can tell you that in the beginning stages, I spent a couple hours, if not a little bit more, talking to other customers and trying to understand patterns for best practices. Now, it is true, Octopus Deploy provides really good documentation. So in terms of like what best practices are, a lot of this is on their website. But once you get into some nuances, it's always helpful to see how other folks are doing some of the same tasks. So it's been a really awesome journey. And just a minute ago, I alluded to Octopus Deploy morphing alongside of us. There is now this really, really cool feature, which is called DORA metrics in Octopus. And
Sure.
If I'm not mistaken, it's an enterprise only feature, but what DORA metrics allows us to do is basically quantify success between the various development teams. And so now we're able to compare practices internally and determine what is working well, what is not. And so, we talked a little bit about cutting edge, but there's also a lot to say in process improvement and just everyday practices, right? And so Octopus, while it was only a continuous delivery tool, has now sort of reached into a critical part of our business, which is process improvement. And so, we have a long path ahead, but just being able to access those metrics and give teams an insight into what's working well and what is not, that is really, really huge for us, Alan.
Absolutely. That's great. Gentlemen, I'd love to talk to you about this more, but I think we're kind of over, and we've got people in the waiting room here. Just real quick, Jorge, for people who want to find out more about Kinder Systems, what's the website?
It's kindersystems.com.
Absolutely. Thank you. Harsh, for people who want to, get one of the best CD solutions out there and find out more about Octopus Deploy, where can they go?
Octopus.com. Pretty straightforward.
Octopus.com. Love it. Gentlemen, thank you. Congratulations on this. This sounds like a real win-win kind of. You guys, have found a key here, Jorge, to really accelerating your go-to-market, making a better experience for your customers. And at the end of the day, that's what those DORA metrics are all about, right? Pleasing your customers, high-performance teams. We're going to take a break here. We'll be back on Techstrong TV in just a second.
Hello everyone, here's some of our upcoming Techstrong learning events. First up, on May 4th, be sure to join us for our DevOps On-Ramp virtual event. Whether you are diving into DevOps for the first time or trying to do it right this time, DevOps On-Ramp will provide you with all the information you need for a successful DevOps journey. Then, on June 1st, join us at the virtual DevOps Connect DevSecOps at RSA Conference 2023 event as we discuss the emergence of security engineers in DevOps and explore the role of developer security champions. On July 11th, at our Cloud Native Now virtual event, we will explore the various facets of cloud native that are essential for a successful digital transformation and enterprise modernization. We hope to see you at all these events. If you want more information about these and other upcoming events, be sure to go to techstrongevents.com. Thank you.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. You know, here on Techstrong, we interview a lot of CEOs, a lot of CTOs, CIO, Chief Digital Officer, Chief that, Chief this, a lot of tech people. We don't interview enough CFOs, Chief Financial Officers, right? And it's because our audience is a tech audience, and a lot of times they don't get quite as excited about, you know, gap analysis and stuff like that. But we live in interesting times right now, right? There's no hiding the fact that the tech industry is subject to the same economic cycles that the rest of, you know, the world economy is. And whether it's because of interest rates or inflation or other macro factors that, you know, we've lived through these last couple of years, we've certainly seen a new era for many in tech, especially for those who've only been in tech maybe 10 years. And it's always been high times, right? Free money, crazy money raises and valuations, and we can't hire enough tech people. Well, things are changing a little bit. My next guest and I are going to talk about it. I want to introduce you to Steve Mitchell. Steve is the Chief Financial Officer for Redgate Software. Steve, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Hi, Alan. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you on. Steve, before we jump into this whole kind of pattern I laid out there, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience a little bit of information about yourself, about your own journey, and then a little bit about Redgate Software for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, sure. So my background, I started out training as an accountant in practice, but for a lot of my career, I worked in telecoms, so in TMT, but in the parts of that where the businesses are more established and actually growth is a lot harder to come by, certainly at the rates we see in a lot of tech companies. And I probably spent half of my 15 years in telcos working outside of the finance function. So I spent time in strategy and marketing and working more with commercial and sales teams before coming back to finance, but didn't spend too much time in the technology teams. I was an outside in looking at the technical teams and trying to understand bits of what they do. And then coming more recently to Redgate, I just joined here a year ago. It's my first time working in a software business and in a much smaller business as well. So at Redgate, we're just approaching 500 people. So I'm learning as I go, but certainly I've got a few initial views on where we can go as Redgate, and I'm sure there are similar themes for a lot of other tech companies our size and other sizes.
Absolutely. And 500 is, you know, it's a decent-sized startup, decent-sized tech company. Steve, just the business of Redgate, if you don't mind, a little bit before we jump into it.
Yeah, so we're a software business. It's all B2B. And our software, we're about 23 years old, entirely bootstrapped, basically, since the very late 90s. And we've grown up really in the database world. So initially supporting database administrators, working with Microsoft SQL Server databases, and then more recently moving more into database DevOps and really trying to support businesses making the most out of their data on any platform, anywhere they're holding that data. So that's what we're all about, and we're continuing on our journey to do that.
Absolutely. And, you know, let's not trivialize it. I think one of the lessons we've learned over the last 2 to 3 years is that it is all about the data, right? We almost forgot that. We were so focused on applications and cloud and all of these great technologies. But at the heart of it all is the data. right? That's the crown jewels. That's the money, and so good place to be in. So, Steve, you heard me intro yourself to the show today. We are living in interesting times in the tech world. For many of our younger audience members, they've never known tough times in tech. For our audience out here, whether you're in the CFO side of things, administration, the business side of the house, tech side of the house, give us some advice. How can we and how can CFOs and those like yourself help? What can we do to we have to stretch our dollars. We got to do more with less. We can't stop growing. What do we do?
Yeah, that's it. And I think the first thing we should recognize is that while there are ups and downs and we're going through some uncertain times now, and that's political uncertainty, economic uncertainty, financial market uncertainty. Nonetheless, the tech sector is still very strong, and we see headlines of even big tech layoffs and so on, and other tech layoffs over the last year. But then it's really good to see that it's also being noted pretty often that actually even the big tech companies have reduced their workforce a little bit, but they're still a hell of a lot bigger than they were 3 or 4 years ago. And it's similar, right, I think, for different sized tech companies. So first of all, we shouldn't overreact, and we shouldn't assume that we don't have all the tailwinds of growth that have been there for a good number of years now. And I think it changes as a business leader, whether you're the CFO or any other leader in a business. The uncertainty sort of changes how you think about some of the decisions that you make. And I think the first thing that we need to do as business leaders is just be as transparent as we can with the people in our organization about why we're making the decisions we're making. Because I remember sitting on the other side of things, and it's incredibly frustrating if you've got a project, or now if you're sat in a product development team in a software business, and suddenly you can't hire those extra roles anymore, and it's going to delay what you're trying to launch. And if you don't understand the rationale behind those decisions, that's probably the single most frustrating thing when you're in a business in those roles. So I think communicating the rationale for why there might be changes is key. And then I think thinking about as a finance person, you learn a term as you come through your training as a junior accountant, if you like, that's called discretionary spend, and it's sort of billed as anything you haven't contractually committed to, or you have to spend right now to keep the lights on in your business. And there are some businesses that will get to a position where they need to think about things that way. But for most businesses, I think a key role of a finance team and a CFO is to not move too quickly to make cuts that we might think of as discretionary, that might be easy decisions now, that might have much longer term implications, negative implications for us. So to give you an example, the easiest thing for me to do when times are uncertain is slash the training budget, slash the learning and development budget. We here at Redgate, all of our product engineering teams, they have 10% time where they can go and use that 10% of their time on learning and development, or on specific projects they're interested in outside of what they're doing day to day. They run expos, they do annual reteaming, they have full days of training when the whole team, the whole division is offsite. It would be really easy to look at that and think, well, that's a lot of time and money being invested. Let's stop that. But the reality is, we'd then be removing a lot of the reasons why great software engineers stay and develop their careers in our business. So I think, coming back to your question, that's just one example of where, as business leaders, we need to not overreact, explain why we're doing what we're doing, and try and make sure that we're still balancing thinking about the long term with the need to make decisions in the short term.
Love it. There's a lot packed in there, Steve, right? I think your opening room, kind of point is really something, though, that I want to emphasize with our audience. When you hire 100,000 new employees over the last 2 years, and then you lay off 10,000 of them, you still have 90,000 more employees than you had 3 years ago, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are
Yeah.
in the tech industry, right? Did we overhire during COVID? Yeah, sure. But, look at 2018, 2019 to now, we've seen tremendous growth. I think the other part is, and not to get too financial with our audience, but when you're dealing with a zero interest rate or thereabout, or in some cases negative interest rates, right? The whole money equation, and now within a year you go up 500 basis points, right? Or something like that, right? And of course that money equation is going to shock the system. And those shocks will have repercussions. It'll set waves off. But if anything, not just the tech industry, it seems like the whole economy has been really resilient when you look at, job numbers and everything else we do. I want to bring up one thing, though, that you didn't bring up, which seems to be having some effect here, and that is this whole AI thing. People, first of all, there's so much money being thrown at AI right now, right? And people are talking about it. Well, we can maybe make do with less people because AI is going to help us here. That's something about the tech industry. We're always looking for a silver bullet, aren't we? But, in spite of how cool ChatGPT and all this stuff is, I still think, as I think you alluded to, that people, it's about data and it's about your people. And holding on to people as best you can and giving them a path of growth is the key to success, good times or bad times.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and it obviously, the advances in AI have been there, but the profile it's got right now is making a lot of people at an individual level as well as a corporate level. It introduces some nervousness and uncertainty, and no doubt it will. It will change things and change the nature of some roles. But I would absolutely agree. It's not going to change the need for great people, and it's not going to change the need for businesses to support the learning and development of the great people they've got if they want to keep hold of them. And in times, when times are tough, and especially when we come out of uncertain times, then that's when really your best people are those, even in tough times, they're the people that will feel most confident that they can go and find a role elsewhere. So it becomes, at least as important as ever to treat people really well and make sure that, that you're the place that they want to stay and develop. And that development for those people might include changes to their role or enhancements to what they do, or AI may make their their roles more interesting. I wouldn't profess to know just yet, but I'm certainly not sat as a doom monger thinking it's awful for people, or celebrating with a pure finance hat on that I can suddenly do without half of my developers because AI will just do that and we won't need to pay for them. That's certainly not my view at the moment.
Absolutely. Interesting stuff. So, Steve, how do you, and if you want to talk specifically about Redgate, feel free, but if not, in generalizations, let's talk about this investing in your employees. How does that manifest itself, you think?
I think, talking from a Redgate perspective, I think the investment that we, how we view the development of our employees over time is that we've got a history of bringing people into junior roles and seeing, not just in tech roles, but across our business, and seeing them develop over time. And some of the senior leaders in our business are people that started out 15 years ago in entry-level roles. And so, for us, and I think it's the same for most businesses, when you see that and you see how effective those people can be as leaders in a business where, they know the business intimately, and they've got that experience, it's great to know that you can do that, and for us, the value that brings is fantastic. And when you're expanding and hiring the way that we are, you're then mixing, that experience across all levels of the business within your business with people that are coming into the business and bringing in the fresh ideas and the fresh perspectives, and challenging some of the ways we do things, which we always look for as well. So, on the ground, what that looks like for us is firstly, incentivizing people. Let's not pretend financial incentives aren't a key driver for most people. So last year, as an example, we introduced a long-term incentive plan that's based on the growth in the value of our company over time, and it's available to join for every permanent employee of our business. So I think having incentives that are there where everyone can feel good if the outcome is right. If we grow the value of the business, then the owners of the business that have put the investment in up front are happy, but also all of us as employees in the business feel like we're getting something back for all of our time and effort and energy as well. So I think there are things like that driving alignment of objectives and getting people engaged in making the business a success. And then a lot of our investment then goes into training and development, into recruiting the right people. So I think, again, most businesses will have a set of values and a culture in their business, a way they work, and making sure that we're hiring people in that can help us evolve, but can fit into that culture. And part of that culture is making sure that we're then offering the right development paths to people in our team. So when I join the business as a leader, part of what I do is make sure, across my team and then link that to the broader business, that we've got development plans in place for each individual within the team, and that we're willing to invest money in helping them develop their skill sets and their careers.
Love it. Steve, we're about at it. Actually, we're over time. We're out of time. But for people who want to get more information about Redgate Software, did we mention the website? I don't remember.
I'm not sure if we did, but I will mention it now. If people
say it again.
red-gate.com, and they'll find out all about us, our products, and our career opportunities there.
Fantastic. Stephen Mitchell, Chief Financial Officer, Redgate Software, here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm thrilled to punch here to have an old friend coming back. The name, the company names change, but he doesn't. He's timeless here. Ashok Reddy, Ashok, we followed you at IBM and then over to CA and did what became Digital AI. And now we're here with KX. But before you tell us all about KX, not everyone is going to know Ashok Reddy like I know Ashok Reddy. Ashok, would you mind maybe giving our audience a little bit of your background?
Yeah, Alan, thanks again for, first of all, having me back. It's always a great pleasure. I think my background, has been in the enterprise software. So I started off with the rational software first and software engineering tools, And then IBM acquired Rational. I was in IBM for many years and created the whole DevOps movement. I was part of that in enterprise DevOps. Then I went to CA, as you said, and I was running for a while the mainframe, and then the whole DevOps space. We got acquired by Broadcom, and I helped build the first software group within Broadcom. And then I moved to work with one of the PE firms to create a new DevOps and value stream management platform company with digital.ai. And then after that, now I'm here in KX and actually based in New York City.
Oh, fantastic. I was just up in New York this past weekend. It's my hometown. And, man, New York is better than it ever was. It's pulling me back. Ashok, I mean, you're modest. It's quite an impressive resume and list of accomplishments and companies where you've really been kind of the driving force in bringing a lot of this, both mainframe and DevOps and value stream and larger DevOps, products to market, and not just bringing products, but really kind of birthing companies almost, or divisions within other companies. But KX, it's a new name for our audience. It's a new name to me. Give us a little of the KX story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I think KX is for me, when I looked at taking this role, one of the things I started off talking to the customers, and KX started in the capital markets typically, where people are trading, lots of real-time information, and it's a time series, things like that. But generally, the mission of the company is really how do you accelerate data and AI-driven innovation for the enterprise customers, using more real-time analytics and being able to combine that with historical and making better decisions. We talk about providing insights at the speed of thought, which I think is a very succinct way of saying, at the end of the day, we all want answers. It's sometimes people start with questions, but it's the answers, what you come and how do you shape that? And the analytics is about really, getting to the right answers, right? So that's, I think, is what KX does. KX has a technology which is based on what we call a KDB Plus, which is the world's fastest time series, as well as a real-time analytics engine. And generally, the performance is about 100 times faster with about 1/10 the cost in terms of compute and storage, and also the power consumption. So, which I think is what our customers are using it for.
Excellent. Before we jump into talking about time series analytics and stuff, for people who want to get more information, maybe they're looking it up while they're listening, what's the website?
It's kx.com.
kx.com.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Ashok, I think you kind of framed what KX does. The topic of our discussion today is time series analytics. And you kind of referenced it there, right? We could use AI and ML, but sometimes in order to make sense of the data, having it with some correlation to chronology, to time, right? Series of events can really bring what looks like chaos into focus.
Yep.
Right? Talk to us maybe about that and what KX does with that.
I think it's a very good point, right? So I would say that, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, Gartner had a keynote on this thing about economics of data. And one of the things they talked about is that if you look at today's landscape, every business is trying to be a data-driven business, and increasingly with AI and providing. So to me, the way it works is today you have databases, there is data warehouses, data lakes, lake houses, and BI, AI, machine learning. All of them are trying to lead to the answer, the decisions, and how do you make decisions, and increasingly in real time. The way it works today is people think about time series as yet another thing. It's a separate data type, but really it's not as much as a separate data, and you need to bring a temporal aspect of it across. In fact, you can unify all types of data you have, whether it's relational, unstructured data, it's on-prem, it's historical, it's real-time. You can use time as a way to unify and bring that, to some extent. It's not just time series data in terms of the market data and real time, where we started off in the Wall Street, but we are moving to Main Street because everything today is machine data, geospatial data. All of it is time-based information. The patient data, if you look at healthcare industry, all of our patient records and our medical history, it's all time-based information. So what happens is, if you look at some of the things what we have done, we talk about time series as one thing, but we recently launched, based on even Gartner, talked about KX as the only company which provides this, what they call a data time house, because you're bringing data warehouses, data lakes, and all the stuff, but you're bringing a time temporal element to it. So thinking about it as everybody needs to have a data time house, because then you take what you learned in the past, the experiences, then you're applying what you're learning, new stuff. Then you're making better informed decision because you have both historical context as well as what new information comes in. And that's how even the generative AI works, because you're creating a model and use algorithms to update the model. And you learn from past experiences, you use new information, and then you generate stuff. And to me, that's the way we think about what we provide is we connect to data, we process data, we store data, we report data, all in one stack.
So this whole observability market that has blown up over the last few years, it sounds a lot like this, right? Where we are first gathering data, right, from disparate sources, then we storing that data as it comes in real time, then trying to analyze it in real time and not real time, and then creating, we used to call it actionable intelligence from that, right? And then taking action. Is this a shade of observability, or where do you separate this from?
Yeah, no, actually, it's actually interesting. Time series data it's a series of observations in a sense, right? You're just using time as a way to do that. I think the interesting thing, what happens with observability is, right, as we looked at, what we have done at CA or any other place, it's people started off with monitoring first. People said, right, here are the things I need to monitor, but you are starting with the question you want to ask first, but we don't know. The observability enables you to ask the questions later, because if you don't know what the root cause of something is, are you able to get to the analysis without knowing what the initial questions are? Because if you're only monitoring, let's say, health, and everybody says that, hey, you need to monitor cholesterol because, that's one of the leading cause for heart attacks, but people still have heart attacks, even if you are monitoring or managing a cholesterol. But then you have to look at everything else about that person, and the observability gives you, what is eating? What did they eat? What did they do before? What was their condition before? So the time as well as the observability is about being able to understand what it is happening and observing things versus you're actually starting with a question. And if you're only monitoring certain things, you may miss out on things. Or the other thing, what happens with observability is if you're just taking timestamp, like you are monitoring something and taking snapshots of it every time, there are a lot of events which happen, which may be not within the time interval. You may not be capturing it at that time. And so you want to look at both complex event processing for as well as time-based information, because the observability is not just based on taking snapshots. You want to combine both events as they happen, as well as combining that with time-based information. So that's how I think you get to the real observability, regardless of whether it's security, whether it's the infrastructure, or you're talking about real world evidence, real evidence, which is the clinical trials people do. And we have a company which used our technology to do the observability of, the type of things what they do from clinical trials for finding COVID vaccines. So how do you actually look at what's happening worldwide? How do you find the right type of people for the clinical trials? And then how do you kind of observe, even after you take a COVID vaccine, what happens over a period of time in a very large population? And that's where the large velocity of the data as well as the large volume comes in. The intersection of it is where you need to observe and make decisions, and especially as new data comes in.
Agreed. Good stuff. So Ashok, if you don't mind, let's talk and I don't want to make you a product guy, but how does this manifest itself in KX? Is it a SaaS type of thing? Is it a traditional product? How do people engage with KX?
Yeah, no, I think KX, started off typically in the market, in the capital markets, where basically we have the top 40 banks in the world, investment banks use our stuff, and what they do is, it's kind of started off by, this is like 10 to 20 years ago, where you already had lots of big data and a lot of data coming in, fast data, and so if you think about, if you're processing data from a stock exchanges, there are 200 stock exchanges worldwide, real-time information coming from NASDAQ, from and New York Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange. If you have algorithms which are working on it, trading and making decisions, so you want to have the right type of trading policies, and what type of models you want to use. And many times, when you have to process all of that, how do you determine that? It's you have to make split-second decisions, but also you need to test it. So people do back testing. So typically, the best quants, the highest, the level data scientists in the world use our stuff to do things called back testing. What that means is, if I want to do the best trading strategy, if I'm a hedge fund, I want to create a trading policy, algorithms to do that. And they go and say, let me apply that with the last 50 years worth of historical data from NASDAQ or from S&P 500 to see what's my alpha, which gives me a signal which allows me to be differentiated. I can beat the market. You try it out on the previous, and then you apply forward. And that's how we decide. So this is where the company got started. So pretty much all, the top banks, the top 4 banks in Japan, in London, and US, and Singapore, everybody uses the technology. What we have done in the last few years is to be able to take this technology and use cases to find, like we do anomaly detection, findings, signal from noise and alpha. You can use the same thing in manufacturing. We are doing that in clinical trials, and we are doing that for semiconductors and fabs. Like when you're manufacturing, there is for finding faults. We got aerospace and defense, where you got this vast amount of data coming in, and you need to process all of it and make decisions both from a historical information as well as when the planes are flying. We end up having to get if you look at what's happening in the war right now, and how do you determine, is it an enemy thing or is not? And that's the same use cases where you're processing terabytes of data now being applied to Formula One cars. We have got several companies who are doing F1 cars where 60,000 sensors, you bring that in, make decisions, and also helps design your car. So it's almost like a research lab in a car. So that's what KX does. And to answer your second part of the question, we actually we're available for people to use on-prem, but now we also have a strategic partnership with Microsoft last year. So Microsoft partnered with us to offer what we call a KDB Insights enterprise on Azure. And we are a first-class service, which we are completely integrated. And Microsoft is taking us to market to their financial service customers, healthcare customers. So that just shows, here is a hyperscaler, one of the most innovative companies coming to us and partner with us. So people can go use us in Azure using Microsoft commits. If you have a commit with Microsoft, you can actually use those with KX. So you almost treat us as a Microsoft product in that case. And we also are available on AWS Marketplace and GCP Marketplace, and increasingly in other people. So we are available on the cloud. We are on-prem. We are also available on the edge.
Great. Ashok, we only have 15 minutes. We went over that time a while ago, but this was a great first introduction to KX. I look forward to having you on in the future with more news. And I'd like to, next time we'll dive more into, is it a time series database that's behind this? Is it, or is that not as important as the time series analysis, analytics? But we'll save that for our next discussion if it's okay.
No, absolutely. I mean, we should definitely have that because it is, we are originally from the day one, we are a vector database, a vector processing engine. So if you think about what's happening with generative AI, we so happen we process time series as the first one. It has an ordered vector table, right? If you think about mathematics, its time series is already pre-ordered. And what we do is process in memory, it processes vectors. And so happens we are so efficient and the fastest when it comes to time series because time series has a natural order to things. So you can get to tables and things like that. But other than that, we can do structured, unstructured. And now increasingly, we can support the large language models. So I would love to have and I think we have some series of announcements coming up in the next month or two. And I would love to come back and talk about case studies.
You always have an open invitation here.
Thanks,
all right,
Alan.
it's kx.com. Check it out.
Yes.
Ashok Reddy, CEO, kx.com here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you, Alan.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our next guest is Ken Exner. Ken is the Chief Product Officer at Elastic, and I think it's his first time here on Techstrong TV. So Ken, welcome to Techstrong.
Thank you, Alan. It is my first time here, so thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you on. We usually don't haze the first-timers too bad, Ken, ever since they suspended us for hazing. Dean Wormer and those guys. But anyway, Ken, why don't if we start off with a little bit of your background, your own personal, background history.
Sure. So I've been at Elastic as the Chief Product Officer for, I think, 7-8 months now. But before that, I was at AWS, and I was at AWS for over 16 years. So I was there pretty much from the beginning of AWS. I was there
pretty much.
EC2 and had a long run there. It was a lot of fun. So I got to see the birth of the cloud and play a role in it. So before that, I worked in a number of other companies on both the engineering side and the product side, dating back to like when I left school and was a database programmer. So, but yeah,
it's amazing how many people,
started their careers as DB people.
and
the internet came and they pulled me into the internet. But
that's pretty much It's pretty much a story. Yes, 16 years. I guess that's about right. I keep forgetting how far along we are. It's 2023, and so it's been, the whole cloud thing for me kind of burst on the scene around 2005. So that's 18 years. So
so 16's right.
S3 launched in the spring of 2006. EC2 launched in October 2006. So it's 17 years now. But it was a lot of fun. I got to learn a lot. I got to participate in that wild ride. It was amazing seeing the birth and the excitement and how it sort of transformed the industry.
Absolutely, it did change.
Just a quick side note: with all this craziness and excitement around AI and GPT and generative AI and stuff, I tell people, to me the difference is the internet changed civilization, right? Think about, even your mom, grandparents out here, they're using the internet to shop, to communicate, and everything else. The cloud, it did change civilization, but it was really a technology industry change agent, right? In other words, your mom or your grandma's out there, they'd point up to the sky and say, oh yeah, I'm getting my information from the cloud. It's only because they saw a commercial that said that. They really don't understand the cloud, right? And it's not up in the sky. It's not one of those white puffy things. Where AI is another thing. When people use it, it's sort of this magical, to them, it's like primitive men with fire. They think it's sentient or whatever, but it sort of is one of those civilization things, not just technology industry things.
I think the cloud was more an indirect impact on lay people. Like it was weren't using the cloud directly, but they were absolutely impacted by it. Like when they,
absolutely. Well,
when they
they're
used
benefiting
Netflix,
from it.
when they used
Yeah.
Uber, when they used any of the modern SaaS products or anything, they were using the cloud indirectly.
Absolutely. They just don't see it.
Yeah, generative AI has the potential, I think, to be both sort of direct and indirect. I think with ChatGPT, people are seeing like conversational AI, generative AI very directly, and they can use it themselves. And it's not just sort of an indirect relationship with the technology. So, I think cloud impacted and transformed things by being sort of a change agent that impacted businesses that then impacted consumers. Some of the AI stuff has the ability to do both.
Absolutely. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Ken. Forgive me for going down that rabbit hole. Why don't we talk Elastic?
Yeah. I joined Elastic. Elastic is, of course, the company behind Elasticsearch and the famous Elk Stack. Great technology for search that's been used to power search applications, from Netflix to Uber to all these other technologies. But it's also a company that has been going into observability and security and sort of using the ability to do search analytics, to do log analytics and stuff, and expanding broader into observability and expanding broader into security. So today, Elastic has not only a traditional search business that is also being transformed by generative AI, and we're working on stuff there, but it's also a complete observability platform and a complete security platform. So we provide on the observability side not only log analytics but tracing and APM. We provide metrics. We provide profiling. We provide synthetic monitoring. Sort of a complete observability platform. And on the security side, similarly, a complete security platform for your NOC. So if you're wanting to do SIM or security analytics, if you want to do endpoint protection, if you want to do cloud security, we have a complete platform for doing that. So I was excited to join Elastic because I saw how they had this great foundational technology, but they were going into these really big and growing industries with big problems to solve.
Absolutely. So to me, harking back to this conversation we had about cloud and AI and everything, Elastic to me is kind of one of these secret technologies that really empower the cloud. Yeah, everybody's heard of AWS and it's Amazon and all of that. But Elastic is sort of a linchpin for a lot of the scalability performance that we see in these cloud-based apps that we all use now, right? And it really, it's not a secret. I think those of us in the industry are very familiar with it. But if you're not in that circle, you may not realize the true breadth of its impact, of the technology there. But let's talk a little bit. Actually, before we jump into it, for people who want to get more information about Elastic, Ken, what website would you send them to?
Elastic.co. So you can go to elastic.co to look up information about not only Elasticsearch, but also our solutions for security and our solutions for observability. Just to reiterate and sort of add to what you were saying, Elasticsearch is, I believe it's the most popular Java open source project of all time. It's like ubiquitous. It's used in tons of applications, not only to implement website search, but anytime anytime you want to add some kind of lookup or search capability to your application, whether it's how to find a car in Uber or how to match you to a potential date in a match app. Like any of these things are search applications. So it's become this ubiquitous technology for helping match and look up and look for relevance. And those kind of features are like ubiquitous in tons of applications.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Elastic Common Schema.
Sure.
ECS, as they're calling it. There's been some recent news well, let me back up. Elastic also has a very long history in the open source community, huge player in that community, supporter, contributor. And this news is in line with that. But Ken, tell us the story.
Yeah, so Elastic Common Schema, ECS, is an open source specification for how to define event data that's consumed by Elasticsearch and other tools. So it defines sort of a common set of field names and data types for how to create, how you should structure your event data. Event data being like metrics or logs, so that different applications can understand it and can create visualizations on top of it, can provide some analytics capabilities on top of it. So it's a lingua franca for how to communicate with the different tools. And the news we have today is that we're merging Elastic Common Schema with OpenTelemetry. We're contributing Elastic Common Schema to OpenTelemetry to become the basis of the logs and event data in OpenTelemetry. So I think this is a great merger between OpenTelemetry and Elastic Common Schema that's going to allow us to take one of the most widely used schema, Elastic Common Schema, for event data, and make it available to OpenTelemetry so that we can build upon this as a community for how we do metrics and log type data in OpenTelemetry.
Makes sense. I think most of our audience is familiar with the OpenTelemetry project, but of course, that and I'm drawing a blank. Prometheus. There it is. OpenTelemetry and Prometheus are probably the backbone of a majority of the observability tools out there in the market today.
Yeah, OpenTelemetry, I think it's the second most active, second most popular CNCF project behind Kubernetes, widely adopted. We're big supporters. We've been investing in and supporting OpenTelemetry for several years now inside of Elastic. And when OpenTelemetry started, it was a way to it was a merger, I think, of Open Tracing and Open Census that defined tracing and APM data, and it has since expanded beyond that to other types of other parts of observability. But the area that I think we've had the most ambiguity around has been around log and event data. So being able to merge ECS, which is the most popular schema for event and log data, together with OpenTelemetry, really completes the story for OpenTelemetry. And we're able to move the industry towards a common schema for all observability data. So I think it's really important for the industry. Like when you have tools that talk different languages, when you have proprietary schemas, it creates friction for customers. So I think this is a win for customers. It's a win for the industry that we can now sort of back OpenTelemetry as the common schema, as the common language, and we don't have to create friction between the different tools. Everyone can sort of speak the same language. If you have an OpenTelemetry client or collector or OpenTelemetry agent, you can know that it will work with Elasticsearch and it will work with every other tool that supports OpenTelemetry. So it creates less friction so that that the agents and collectors will work with the different tools that consume that data.
Absolutely. And it's an important point that you make here, is it really does complete an aspect of this. Ken, not everyone out here is an expert on open source licensing and how IP is handled in open source and so forth. So when we say Elastic contributed the ECS to the OpenTelemetry project, let's kind of do a chart, if you will, an org chart. You've got this OpenTelemetry project, which in and of itself is managed and I guess owned, right, by the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which in and of itself is a daughter foundation of the Linux Foundation. So ultimately the Linux Foundation, right, through CNCF, owns and manages the OpenTelemetry project. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't people from companies like an Elastic or ServiceNow or various other companies that are part of CNCF here and OpenTelemetry that aren't involved in the day-to-day, the maintainers of the project, the TOCs, right, and so forth, that help sort of guide the project to make sure that it's delivering what the community needs and what the market needs. So when a company like Elastic contributes, in this case ECS, to this open source project, they're actually transferring the ownership and day-to-day management of it to, in this case, the OpenTelemetry project, but you're involved.
More than that, there's like the copyright that we're
Yes.
but what we're really doing, it is an open source project today. It's backed by Elastic, but it's also our user community has contributed to ECS. What we're really doing is committing to work on this in OpenTelemetry. We are committing to make this the de facto schema that we use and that we will continue to invest in. So part of the news here is not just that we are merging schemas and we're contributing the Elastic Common schema to OpenTelemetry. We are committing to working in OpenTelemetry going forward and making sure that we continue to evolve this schema going forward as part of OpenTelemetry.
So, and that implies your support, not just as a user of it, but as a supporter, maintainer, contributor, in every sense of the word, right? You may not own the copyright or IP, who owns the IP in open source, but you guys are 100% behind it, have been, will continue to be as it's part of this bigger project now.
Yeah, this is our schema, and we are merging it together with OpenTelemetry. This is how we will, how our tools will work going forward. So it is as much about the commitment we're making to OpenTelemetry to working on this there, not outside of OpenTelemetry as anything else. So I think this is good for OpenTelemetry, and it's good for us and for our customers too, because they can know that we are going to be working with OpenTelemetry across all signal types and observability to make sure that they have an open set of clients, open set of agents that they can use, and that we will fully support it.
Excellent. So, if people are already using the OpenTelemetry project,
right, this is in there. Go ahead.
If you're using the OpenTelemetry project, you're going to benefit from having these some of the new capabilities of ECS merged in. It's a very mature schema for event and log data. It's going to improve the quality of the overall OpenTelemetry project. You can also know that all the clients that have been developed for Elastic Common Schema are going to be evolving to support OpenTelemetry, and you're going to be able to have one set of clients. So I think it's great. Like I don't want proprietary clients. I want open clients. I want people to be able to, choose Elastic or choose someone else. I want to win their business every day. I don't want them to be having to be locked in because of proprietary languages. I want to be forced to win customers' business every day, and I think that's a good thing for consumers.
Absolutely. Where can we get more information on this stuff, though, Ken? Should they go to the OpenTelemetry project?
You can go to the OpenTelemetry project. There's information about it there, and you'll see the latest information on ECS has been merged into the OpenTelemetry project, and you can learn about it there.
Ken, thanks for coming on today. Good luck. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Alan. It's been a pleasure.
All righty. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be back in a moment.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hello and welcome back to KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con Europe. We're talking today with Deepak Goel, the CTO for D2IQ, and we're going to be talking about Kubernetes and what's complex and what's not complex. Deepak, welcome to the show.
Nice meeting you, Mike.
The perception today is that Kubernetes is hard to manage and it's difficult, but in reality is somewhat different. There's the base platform, which seems to have gotten maybe easier to manage, but then there's all the stuff that sits on top of it these days. So what should people really be expecting about Kubernetes in terms of its complexities these days, and how should they approach this?
Yeah, you are right that Kubernetes, after being 8-9 years into existence, has become simpler, and the aspect that has become simpler is its day zero operation, which is installation of the Kubernetes. So installation of the Kubernetes has become a lot easier. Now it is not difficult to install Kubernetes. What is still very difficult is to manage the day two beyond the maintenance of Kubernetes. And as people are adopting Kubernetes for their production environment, there's also a complexity being added that vanilla Kubernetes is just a platform to offer, but then they need other applications to run to observe Kubernetes health, for example, observability, for example, security, authentication authorization, policy management. CNCF does offer a plethora of these applications, but that's at the complexity. The more choices you have, the more you need to figure out which one of these choices makes sense to you, which one you should adopt, which one you should integrate with. The other complexity is all these projects, they move independently with each other. Now, who should make sure that how these different applications fit together to create a complete platform that can be run in production? And not every organization has the skill set to traverse or to navigate this CNCF landscape or ecosystem of like 200 or 300 plus applications and to fit them together into a cluster. And I strongly believe it's not their job either. Like if a banking system is there, they just want to run their containerized application on Kubernetes, asking them to figure out rest of the Kubernetes, I don't think that's the right call. And I try to explain the complexity of Kubernetes with the car analogy. So if you ask a driver to configure the engine first before driving the car, they'll say it's too complex. And that's what is happening with Kubernetes. We have exposed the engine of Kubernetes to the developers and asking them to configure it before they can even deploy their application, which is what DevOps is saying, that the developer should also do the operation. What's ending up happening is the operational aspect of DevOps has become so large and so big that they are getting less and less time on development because of the configurations, that explosion that they are facing with Kubernetes. I think we need to move a stack higher to abstract Kubernetes in a way that it gives like a steering, brakes and accelerator to the developers so that they can just deploy their application and not having to worry what is the engine. Yes, some people need to still worry about the engine, but those would be the specialized mechanics who can take care of the Kubernetes.
We hear about shift left all the time, but most of the developers I know don't really want to know Kubernetes. They just want to write code.
Yes.
So have we overestimated what we want developers to do?
Kind of. I mean, DevOps was attractive. It has some benefits because then the developers can decide what's the right tooling to use. But then again, if the choices goes beyond a particular limit, it becomes complexity. Like CI/CD is good till the deployment part is there, but troubleshooting is bad. Troubleshooting is complex, right? How can we take this a notch further by not saying that you can easily deploy your application, but maybe also easily troubleshoot your application, which is what is happening and which is what will happen is we are seeing a lot of progress happening in the field of AIOps, which is how can we use make the system smart enough to tell what is going wrong in the system. Because ultimately these all are distributed systems and they are very complex to deal with. And frankly speaking, should not be job of every developer to understand the entirety of the thing. They should be focused on the business application. What should happen is the system should be smart enough to automatically indicate and notify where the attention is needed instead of just watching the couple of dashboards and figuring out what's going on with the system.
Initially, when we deployed Kubernetes, we saw a lot of DevOps teams involved. But are we also starting to now see traditional IT administrators get involved, and they don't have programming skills per se, but they can access some sort of graphical tool, I would imagine.
Right.
So is the whole thing becoming more accessible to a broader number of IT operations people?
Right. This is a trend that has been repeated whenever big organizations like Global 2000 start adopting a newer technology. So what happens in the life of Kubernetes is, initially Kubernetes was picked by developers in the newer startups and companies, and they got very excited about the opportunities that this platform provides to them. But then the bigger organization was still evaluating whether this technology is here to stay. Now, 8-9 years down the line, yes, everybody has acknowledged that cloud native and Kubernetes is here to stay. And now they are requesting the same simplicity from this platform Kubernetes that they have been requesting from other platforms as well. And so we are seeing a requirement that how can we make the management of Kubernetes easier, whether it is dependent on creating and provisioning a cluster to deploying an application. They want simplicity, single click installation. And I think that's the right call because, as I said, not everybody needs to know the complex ecosystem under the hood, but few people need to know, and that's what the IT specialists are for. But the other developer community within these big organizations can continue to avail the simplicity of the abstraction.
A lot of the organizations I talk to are kind of all over the place in terms of versions that they're running of Kubernetes.
Right.
Some are as far back as 1.12 and others are maybe relatively current. What is the challenge with staying current with Kubernetes, and why aren't more organizations on the latest and greatest version?
I'll answer that into two parts. One is the traditional mindset with the upgrades. Upgrades in software industries has always seen as challenging. Like people don't touch the system that is working because there's always an inner fear of like, what if something goes bad, right? So there's a general hesitancy with upgrades. The second aspect is, which ties to my first answer, which is like installing Kubernetes is simple. Managing Kubernetes from day two is not that simple, and upgrade is one of those things. And it's not just the Kubernetes layer, because upgrading just vanilla Kubernetes is still simple, but when Kubernetes is running with other applications, you need to make sure that all these applications are running on the latest version of Kubernetes, which is to make sure that the API that they are using is not deprecated. And knowing this means you need to know the engine that you are upgrading, and that makes it complex. What we need to do is we need to extend what makes Kubernetes so popular to upgrades. For example, why Kubernetes is so popular is its declarative nature, its YAML format, its API-driven approach. However, if you see upgrades, they are still not declarative. They're still not, you can't just say, okay, I need Kubernetes from 124 to 125 and the system takes care of upgrading it declaratively. You still need to specify the steps. You need to first upgrade the control plane node. You then need to upgrade the nodes, and that's a lot of complexity, which again builds up this mindset of like why we need to upgrade if we don't have to upgrade. So we need to make the upgrade simple and then approach the community, say, developers, don't worry, this upgrade is single click, just do it and it will happen.
All right, folks, you heard it here. It is finally getting simpler. It's been a long time in coming, but if you're just getting started, you're probably getting the benefit of all the work that's been going on for the last 7 years. Deepak, thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Mike. Nice meeting you.
All right, and we'll be back in a minute. Hello and welcome back to KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con Europe. I'm here with Jimmy Mesta, who's the CTO for KSOC, and we're talking about Kubernetes Security Posture Management. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
That's right, thanks for having me.
You guys launched this at the show, so why don't you give us a little explanation of what is the problem you're trying to solve here? How does this thing work?
We did launch, thanks. So we deal with real-time KSPM, which may or may not be a phrase you've heard of, but we instrument Kubernetes in real time, and we've noticed a few issues over the years with point-in-time scanning, and we're trying to address them. So if you scan a cluster every 24 hours, every 4 hours, you're bound to miss things. So we instrument in the event stream coming from Kubernetes in real time to give you a full life cycle of the problems you have, and you can hopefully drive down those issues over time.
Organizations have invested in all kinds of security tools over the years. Is securing Kubernetes different? Does it require a different set of tools? What should people be thinking about as they approach security in the Kubernetes space?
Yeah, we believe it does require a different set of tools. You can't bolt on things from the past that worked in just cloud security posture management, because Kubernetes is ephemeral. Containers live for 5 minutes or less, workloads come up and down, and it's really easy to miss bad things happening in your cluster. And scanning every 24 hours, you're leaving a lot on the table from a security perspective.
Every time there's a new innovation and a new platform, everybody gets excited, and then about a year or two later, somebody starts talking about security. Feels like we're doing that again, and security feels like a little bit of an afterthought. So is security catching up now with where people are with Kubernetes?
I think that's our goal at KSOC, right? We're trying to bring real security solutions into a platform that's evolving really fast. So it is a bit of cat and mouse historically, but we're trying to get ahead of it this time.
Are you seeing more attacks launched against Kubernetes clusters? Because a lot of this stuff was always in experimental mode somewhere, and now I think it's moving into production. So are the bad guys finding this?
I think they are, yeah. We see cryptocurrency miners, backdoors, malware, data exfiltration. There are bad things happening in high impact clusters every day. And we have a CVE release last week pertaining to RBAC in Kubernetes, which is kind of a first of its kind. So that's going to be the trend this year for sure.
Do you think that the security people are going to come and manage this, or we think that the DevOps/DevSecOps people are going to manage security along with IT operations and everything else that they're trying to do?
I think it's a better together story there for sure. I think security teams need to learn how to work with DevOps and SRE and platform teams, and vice versa. I think the platform team ultimately will be implementing a lot of the security solutions together.
Everybody is shorthanded with looking for people when it comes to security in general. Trying to find somebody who knows Kubernetes security may be even harder. So, do we have a critical shortage of skills in this area? Because it seems like everybody's looking for the same person to hire.
It is a unicorn role for sure. I think the CNCF does a great job with the Linux Foundation with training, certificates pertaining to security specifically. But we need intelligent tooling that can help augment the team, right? There's not an unlimited set of humans that can come in and fix these problems. So we need better solutions that filter out the noise.
You cannot walk down the street today without somebody leaping out to tell you about their great new AI thing. Will AI play a role in securing Kubernetes, and what might that look like in your imagination?
I think AI can process certain events and do certain computationally expensive processes that we couldn't before. I don't think it's a replacement for proper security tooling, and there's still a lot to be discovered on how secure AI is for this environment. Do we want to send sensitive data and rely on it for everything? Probably not, but it's going to be it's going to play a big role in helping these tools get better.
If we made you king of Kubernetes for a day, what would you fix from a security perspective? What's that one thing you wish the community would kind of look at and say, guys, let's focus on this a little bit?
Role-based access control and RBAC in Kubernetes is powerful, yet underserved from a lot of angles, and I would definitely talk about that. I did yesterday here at the conference. I had a talk about RBAC and how to handle it from a security perspective, and I think we have a lot of work to do there.
What's your best advice then to people who are just starting out with security? They're going to try to work with Kubernetes. What is it that you know now that you kind of wish you knew 4 or 5 years ago when you started out?
Yeah, we have a lot more available. We have the means to build clusters securely at a large scale. So I think I would learn about what policies should govern and kind of, have the guardrails in place for developers to build, but in a secure way. And I'd learn the internals, like it always to go back to square one of like, what is a container? How does it work? And how does the Kubernetes API interact with the rest of the ecosystem? Very fundamental things, but I think it's really important before we start applying security.
And to your point, it seems to me at least that, when I look at all the things that somebody discovers a new vulnerability, it's like, Well, yeah, if that could be exploited on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock if you were standing on your head. But a lot of the fundamentals we don't seem to address. So what is our challenge with just getting the basics right?
We are trying to move as fast as possible. Every organization has strict deadlines. They need to ship software yesterday. And I think to go back and reassess fundamental knowledge, we don't give ourselves the time, resources, money, and effort. And I think it's that's going to be a problem, right? That's going to come to a reckoning at some point. So,
are we building and deploying applications too fast? Or are we unsafe at any speed, as somebody once said?
I think we're at least at KSOC, we're trying to let people move at breakneck speeds while having the guardrails to stay secure. I can't speak for everyone, but I think there's a lot of vendors here that would probably say the same.
All right, cool. You heard it here, folks. Guardrails are a good thing. Go get some because bad things can happen otherwise. Jimmy, thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much.
All right. Pleasure.
Yep. Appreciate it.
All right, folks. We'll be back in a minute. Hey, folks. Welcome back to KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con Europe. I'm Mike Vizard, and I'm here with Ramiro Baraleza from Oketo, and we're talking about developer experience in the Kubernetes environments. Ramiro, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike, having me here. It's great to talk to you.
People have been talking about the suboptimal developer experience in Kubernetes environments for some time now. Is that finally getting better? Because it seems like that particular issue has been holding up development of applications, especially cloud-native applications, because not as many developers are building apps as you could hope for. I think there's maybe 7 million building on Kubernetes, and out of a population of 50 million. So, do we got to get better at this whole developer experience?
Spot on. Yes, we are. That's one of the reasons why I started Oketo. I've been a cloud-native developer for many years, and that was always something that frustrated me a lot. So it's great to see, Oketo, but many other companies very focused on this. And what's even more exciting to me is that now we're seeing these large companies investing and creating teams and budgets around developer experience because they recognize that that's something you need to invest on to get better at. So when I look back like 4 years ago when we launched the company to today, there's great progress. There's always things to do more, but it's getting better. KubeCon after KubeCon, all these things are getting much better. It's easier, more inclusive. We have work to do, but I'm very excited for where things are and where we're going.
You mentioned that there's a lot more work on developer experience. I mean, we've been treating developers shabbily for years. Why now? What's driving this change?
So one thing you mentioned I think is driving this change is there's a lot more developers than before. I think we're seeing this really interesting transition of software engineering being something that was kind of a niche, and now it's something that pretty much every company in the world needs. Like to our company, we talk to everything from traditional enterprises, startups, governments. So everybody has software engineers. So now, like anything else, when you have a resource, you want to make sure you're using it as good as possible, and that's where that experience. I think also Kubernetes it is solving a lot of issues, but also created some complexities that we're now trying to figure out, and that's where that experience is becoming a topic. I think it's not just on Kubernetes, like everywhere else, front end, back end, other types of development, but I do believe that particularly for cloud native, because it's such a broad ecosystem, we need a strong focus on dev experience.
One of the issues that keeps coming up over and over again is that we want to shift left, theoretically, and developers are supposed to manage the platform as part of that. I've talked to very few developers that are excited about managing Kubernetes. So what is the swim lane? What is the right separation of concern here?
That's a really good question, because for the longest time we were just shifting left everything, and I think that we maybe overdid it. So I think one of the things that I talk a lot about is how it is important to shift left, but it's also important to reduce the cognitive load that developers need to deal with. Like you want developers to be able to be good at what they do and not have to be experts on everything. So that's where I feel like a lot of us are now talking about building platforms as a way to reduce what developers need to know and let them focus on business value and not have 100 people in a company being experts in Kubernetes, and instead have 10 who are really good at it and the other 90 be good at whatever your company is doing, whether it's banking software, logistics, or SaaS, etc.
We seem to be living between two extremes. On the one hand, people have been, dealing with PaaSes forever and a day, but they're highly opinionated, and everybody wants to have their little tool tweak, and then kind of defeats the purpose of the PaaS. On the other end, we see organizations that have built some custom thing from scratch that they are hoping that the organization will standardize, and the software engineers love it, and the developers are kind of indifferent. So is there some way to kind of have a middle ground where I can have the benefits of something that's opinionated, but that's flexible and extensible, and is that what we're trying to get to?
I agree completely. I always call this kind of like the Goldilocks effect, where things are too hot to call. I think so. One of the things that I've always been very excited about with Kubernetes is because it became kind of this de facto standard for all things cloud native. Now we have a baseline we can all work together on. So people are building PaaS, people are building more open platforms, but because we're all speaking this Kubernetes language, that means all of our platforms are extensible by default. And we see that a lot where some of our users, we have an open source tool as well, some of our contributors, they come with like some like the very heavy-handed draw the square, others prefer a more open, and Kubernetes really allows you to build opinionated passes, but with these escape valves to build like more flexibility, which I think is getting us closer to that ideal world of you have a platform that gives you 80%, but you have the sensibility to build the other 20% when needed.
Yeah. How automated can all this get? We see people talking about generative AI and coding and stuff like that. Is that going to be commonplace for everywhere we go? I mean, and will it write code, or will it just kind of type ahead?
That's a good question. I hope so. I think that like all technologies, AI and platforms and all these things are going to help us be more effective. So I'm hoping for a future where we no longer have to write the scaffolding code, the basic things, so that we can get out of the way and we can use what humans are good at, which is innovating, solving hard problems, and let AI and all these other solutions help us with the long tail of work that needs to be done.
Kubernetes is now, shall we say, fashionable, and we are starting to see more applications being developed as a result, but I'm also starting to hear from folks who are saying a lot of applications are being built for Kubernetes that are not really well suited for Kubernetes, and they're not fit for purpose. So do we need to look twice before we jump here and figure out exactly what types of applications lend themselves to this particular platform?
I think so. Like any other technology, we all go through a phase where like this one thing looks super exciting and we want to do everything there. It happened before with cloud computing. It happened before with virtualization. I think it's important when we're adopting technology to look at it, but I think it's also important to understand that Kubernetes is really about orchestrating resources. So as long as you need scale, as long as you need infrastructure provision fast, it's a great fit. Like, I think I'm also looking forward to the time where Kubernetes becomes boring and it's just this layer that you just know it's there, because that's when it's gonna shine, when it's it's invisible, it gives you value, but it doesn't get in the way. And we're getting there. There's a lot of like effort being done in like making it more standard, easier to use, more reliable. And once we get there, I think everybody should just be able to run pretty much any workload on Kubernetes and not think about it.
So at the show, you guys announced integration with AWS, and what was involved in that? Why should people care? And because it's all Kubernetes, right? So it should run anywhere magically.
It does, and that was our vision when we started Octeto. But as we acquire customers, as we talk to more people in the industry, what you were saying before, we realized that not everybody is 100% in Kubernetes. Some applications are better suited for having parts on the cloud, parts on Kubernetes. So our Dev Experience platform has evolved to allow you to define these development environments that include Kubernetes resources, but now also AWS resources in Google Cloud. You can use things like Terraform, and even things like feature flags using LaunchDarkly, MongoDB Atlas for search instances. Our goal here is define a dev experience that your team needs. Don't be constrained by Kubernetes or cloud, and our tooling will let you kind of expand to either one of this as you need it, so that you have to make sure you have the right tools, and we're helping you by giving you the experience, the automation to provision everything for your developers.
All right, folks. Well, you heard it here. I think we're supposed to remember that DevOps and software engineers exist to make developers happy. We tend to forget that a lot, but maybe we got to go back to the fundamentals. Ramiro, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Talking to you.
All right, folks. We'll be back in a minute.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From MediaOps, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Prem Iyer, who is Senior Vice President for Global Ecosystems at Palo Alto Networks, and we're talking about the role marketplaces are now playing in the cloud era to help secure environments. Prem, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
How is the way that we acquire security software changing in the cloud era? It seems like there's marketplaces almost everywhere you go, and there's marketplaces have a collection of different tools in it. So are we getting a little tool happy, or is it just that one of the benefits is maybe all these tools that are in a marketplace are pre-integrated, so things are becoming a little less complex?
Yeah, I think, Michael, you asked the question of the day, right? Which is, we think about this as, how do we constantly make it easier for customers to consume? So if you take a customer point of view, when we were in a world of only hardware, it made sense to leverage a traditional channel partner, a distributor, right? To get that hardware, maybe have financing, there's inventory that had to get stocked somewhere, all these things. And as the world shifted, as we continue to move towards cloud delivered, towards SaaS products and applications, some of those things are the same, but some of them are different. So we absolutely have a really critical role, which I'm sure we'll talk about, with some of those traditional channel partners and how they play into the new ecosystem. But we also have a role of an emerging route to market, and that's the cloud marketplace that you've identified, because they do centralize a lot of the both technology solutions that customers ultimately want to have procured, to deploy, to test. They make it easy to consume. They make it easy to test. They make it easy to go and try different things. And then they make it easy ultimately to continue to grow their footprint and within those technology solutions by centralizing it all in one place, by having it easy to procure, having payment methods to be very smooth, and be able to work with the manufacturer in that way. So it's not, as we said before, right? This is not something that's coming down the road. It's not I'm a American football guy more than a hockey guy, but it's not just where the puck is going. It's where the puck is right now, right? We're here in the heart of it, where customers are saying, hey, you know what? We do want to buy, but can we buy through this cloud marketplace? Makes it really easy for us.
There is clearly a wave of consolidation happening in the cybersecurity space. A lot of it is driven by the cloud, but one of the knocks has always been against centralization is that it kind of limits your options. But maybe as we go forward, we found a way to kind of experiment and have our cake, but still kind of get the benefits of the consolidation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think, this is where the cloud marketplaces have done it right? Which is, I don't think we're seeing this very narrow view of what's available, right? You should perceivably, you could go, any customer who's chosen any of the big cloud providers can go to their marketplaces and find the solutions that they're looking for within the wider ecosystem of technology. Of course, inside security, we hope that choice is Palo Alto Networks. And we believe that a lot of the outcomes that our technologies deliver, whether it's across our cloud security, whether it's across traditional network and data center security or SASE, and whether it's across our security operations center security solutions, that we do deliver higher and better outcomes for clients than our competition. But the point is that the customer does have that choice, right? And they can come to the marketplace and do that testing, do that evaluation, and not be restricted to only a limited set of options as they explore what's best for their environment.
We have seen a lot more focus these days on the total cost of cybersecurity. And I think one of the hidden costs that people don't really focus on enough maybe is integration, all these different point products that you got to stitch together. If something's in a marketplace, have we essentially validated the integration and the headache's going to be less and the total cost starts to drop?
So, this is a really, really salient one right now. And I tell you that for a couple of reasons, right? This question. So on one hand, when we talk about integration, this is not just, hey, let me go to Amazon.com and I'm going to buy a widget and I'll go buy the widget and it'll give me 8 options of widgets and great, I have the widget, right? The widget, there's no real tie of the widget to Amazon.com, right? When you go and buy something for your home. This is more about, well, on one hand, you can absolutely do that with Palo Alto Networks and security solutions broadly across the cloud. We actually have tighter integrations with those cloud providers, right? And we've launched, for example, very recently, our next-gen firewall as a service offering on some of the big cloud providers. You'll see more of that in the coming months across other ones as well. We've launched IPS solutions that are cloud native, where a customer can actually click into the cloud console and see Palo Alto Networks IPS built right in. So that integration is absolutely there, right? And it makes it a customer feel very confident that these big cloud providers, where they have a lot of trust and put a lot of commitment to, have tested and validated our solutions and make sure it does work as advertised, right? So that's on one hand. On the other hand, because you can use integration a lot of different ways, I think one of the things we're seeing is Gartner recently put out a report talking about vendor consolidation, the security consolidation. And in 2020, that was only 29% of enterprises that were looking at it. Now 75% of enterprises are looking at this need to consolidate vendors. And at first glance, I would think, that means that it must mean that they're doing it because they want to save money, right? That the reason they want to actually go do this is to save money. But actually what we find is that's not the case, right? It is one important thing. But one of the other parts of security consolidation is actually increasing your risk posture, making sure that they're actually able to improve that. And the actual security outcomes was driving it. While only 29% of the respondents to Gartner said, yeah, we want to save some money too, right? Cost is important. So integration has a couple different ways of looking at it. One is into the marketplace, right? Are we actually integrating our technology? The other is the integration across our platform, and why customers are saying, as Gartner is suggesting, that we do need vendors like Palo Alto Networks, who created the most comprehensive cybersecurity platform in the world, to come together so we can increase security posture and at the same time reduce costs.
What becomes then of all those integrators and folks that you referred to in the channel partners? And there's a small army of these people. How does their role evolve, and how do users need to think about these things?
Yeah, and I think you said two things that caught me right away. One is small army. I would say it's a very large army, right? It's massive, actually. If you look at our ecosystem and the types of partners that we engage, right? Whether it's traditional value-added reseller, solution provider, distributors, whether it is global system integrators, whether it is our tier one telcos and service providers, right? Those types of partners, whether it's our other ISV and technology partners. There's a massive army that we've built in terms of our ecosystem in Palo Alto Networks. And actually play to your second point of what I caught in your question is, how do they evolve, right, in this new world towards cloud marketplaces? And I think that's the key, Michael. I think what you'll find is there are partners who are pace setters, who recognize this shift in technology procurement and how customers want to buy, and say, where's my real value in the new world? And that value is in actually the design, the architecture, the implementation, the configuration, the optimization of those technology solutions in the market, in customer environments once they've been procured. It's not only in that transaction motion of the product and how we get that product sold into the customer, right? It's those other functions. And so those pace setters will do that. They will make that shift. They are making that shift real time with us, right? Leaning in and saying, how do we become your services partner? How do we go help make sure customers are more secure? Because having a bunch of cloud delivered or as a service solution sitting in a proverbial back office or warehouse doesn't do anything for me if they're not running them and getting the efficacy that those solutions can provide once deployed. So they are making that transition. There's another group, yes, that are absolutely laggards, and it'll take them time to realize that shift is happening. And what we're doing is encouraging this opportunity for them to say, look at this huge opportunity, much more margin rich, frankly, for them, that they can create if they wrap that services op around our product technology, as customers change their procurement methods. So we definitely think there's an evolution. And we are helping and leading the way with our partners. And a lot of what we've done with our Next Wave award-winning program, right, our channel program and partner program, is doing exactly that, is guiding them towards those areas where they can create more opportunity, more margin by leveraging some of the specializations and things that we're talking about on helping customers to become more secure by using our solutions.
Is this to a degree all but inevitable because we are seeing more automation, more artificial intelligence, all these things have to leverage a common data pool to drive the AI models. So is the technology essentially going to force all these issues anyway?
Yeah, I think that's what you're partly seeing. If you call it, I know we started this with talking about cloud marketplaces, right? And in some, AI notwithstanding for a moment, that is the technology evolution, right? That is shaping this and kind of forcing the discussion, as you say. So yes, but I would suggest it's not only AI dependent. I would suggest that it's actually already started with the development of these marketplaces being the easy button, call it, for customers to say, hey, I want to try Palo Alto Networks Cloud Security, Prisma Cloud. I want to try Prisma Access SASE with Palo Alto Networks. I want to try this, AI built, SOC solution that Palo Alto has built around Cortex, and how we can actually reduce the noise dramatically by leveraging our solutions. I can go do that because the cloud marketplace actually makes it easy for me to go do that, right? So I don't know if it's AI dependent. I think AI would be just another catalyst towards it. Let's say that, right? But it's something that's actually already started, that trend.
Is the proof of concept all but dead then? Because now I can just download stuff and experiment with it and try it before I buy it kind of thing. And maybe I don't need to set up all these POCs that used to take months.
So I don't think that goes away, right, Michael? I think what you're seeing is just a ability to gain speed towards that, a POC, an ability to gain efficiency in how we're able to see the results of what may have taken weeks of months of planning to understand what success criteria looks like and how do I go ahead and get this technology in-house and get it deployed. Now, this is exactly kind of tying back some of the stuff you talked about earlier around the partner evolution, right? Customer now may be able to say, okay, I can try, more and more of Palo Alto Networks security capabilities more quickly, but I still need someone to go help me get it operational. I still need someone to actually make sure that it's working correctly and that I'm really optimizing, right, those technologies to the best potential. So I can actually see, do I need this? So I don't know if the POC goes away. I think what we're saying is we're actually probably able to do more of them faster and able to show outcomes to customers in a more agile fashion because of their ability to procure differently.
Do you think ultimately it will become easier to do defense in depth because of that approach? Because historically, everybody had a firewall and an endpoint protection system, but then after that, the list of things they had drops off dramatically. And part of it was just, it was too hard to put it all together. So will we get to the point where, rather than just kind of talking about defense in depth, that becomes more of a default option?
Yeah. So I think this is an area where if you look again at what kind of Palo Alto Networks strategy has been around this and our vision for what we can offer customers, I will start with, we don't claim to solve every problem in cybersecurity for every customer. But what we do claim, Michael, is that across the data center network, across the public cloud, and across the security operations center, we have the most comprehensive cybersecurity platform addressing the largest percentage of the cybersecurity threat to enterprises than anybody else. It's just a fact. It's not my opinion. If you just go look, if we're going through each of the issues that someone may face, whether it is cloud security posture management in the cloud, or infrastructure entitlement management, or it's IoT security, or it is SASE, or it is orchestration automation inside the SOC, or it is XDR. just all of them have the box, not just checked with Palo Alto Networks, but market leading, right? In 13 or 17 recognitions, 13 categories, 17 recognitions by on all those areas. So I think what I would say is on your defense in depth question is that now we can just say to a customer, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, look, you're able to now sample, test, evaluate, deploy quickly the best of breed technology solutions in cybersecurity in a singular platform across those areas I talked about in cloud, SOC, and data center from Palo Alto Networks in a way that can deliver outcomes to you quickly so you can make a decision on, is this best for me and does this actually improve my overall posture, which is the goal for us anyway, as we think about our vision of making every day safer than the day before. So that's what I would tell you on defense in depth is that, again, it was getting to speed and the ability to show the outcome and efficacy of that more than changing, how a person approaches, particularly getting to defense in depth.
All right, folks, they say there's an app for everything. Cybersecurity is no different. Prem, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate the time.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had some amazing interviews with industry experts to give you the latest in the tech world. But don't you leave just yet. We will be live streaming our RSAC 2023 coverage starting at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.